I first noticed something was off when I realized my favorite hoodie had gone missing for the third time that week. At first, I laughed it off, assuming my roommate had borrowed it without asking, like she usually did, and I had shrugged it off as one of those minor annoyances that come with living with someone else. She had always been a little quirky, harmlessly so, and I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. But over the next few days, I started noticing subtle changes. She was overly protective of certain areas in her room. Her phone seemed to have too many passwords and locks, and she would give me these small, unreadable smiles whenever I asked her if she had borrowed anything recently. One night, I came home late from work, exhausted, and found her in the living room sitting cross-legged on the floor, scrolling through her phone with an intensity that made my stomach twist. Something about the way she was looking at the screen, so focused and almost reverent, made me pause. I didn't want to interrupt, but the unease in my chest pushed me to check her drawer later that night when I pretended to look for a charger. I froze. Hidden behind a stack of notebooks was a second phone, identical to hers but clearly not meant to be seen. Hesitation froze me for a moment. Then curiosity overpowered caution, and I scrolled through it. What I saw made my pulse spike. Hundreds of photos of me wearing my clothes, each one meticulously taken, angles captured as if someone were studying every detail. Even more disturbing were the captions, my name, my birthday, little notes about things I had said in passing. The familiarity was unnerving, and the precision of it made my skin crawl. I confronted her the next morning, holding the phone with my hands slightly shaking, asking her why she had this, why she needed a second phone, and her response was calm, almost chilling in its serenity. She smiled, a small curve of her lips that didn't quite reach her eyes, and said, "I'm practicing." The word lingered in the room, heavy and ambiguous, and I felt my stomach drop. Practicing for what? I asked, heart racing, expecting perhaps some twisted excuse, some joke, but she only tilted her head, maintaining that unnerving smile, and said softly, "You'll see." From that moment, the harmless quirks I had once ignored transformed in my mind into something much darker. The feeling of living in my own apartment with someone who had spent who knows how long capturing detailed images of me without my consent was suffocating. Each day I noticed her observing me in new ways, the way she would linger in doorways as I changed, the way she would casually mention things I thought only I knew, details I had never shared with her. Fear mingled with confusion and a strange fascination. I couldn't quite believe this was happening in my own home. I tried to set boundaries at first, subtly, moving my clothes, leaving notes, trying to reclaim my sense of privacy, but she always managed to skirt around them, her calm, almost serene demeanor making it impossible to be angry for long. And yet, there was something in the precision of her actions, the way she seemed to catalog not just what I wore, but how I wore it, how I moved in it, that made me uneasy on a level I had never experienced before, an unsettling combination of intimacy and intrusion that I could not ignore. Nights became difficult. I would lie awake wondering what else she had recorded, what other personal details she might be cataloging in that second phone, and I caught myself scanning her room when I was home, watching for anything out of place, any hint that I was being observed even when I wasn't aware. I began to notice patterns, little habits I had never considered before, the way she would adjust her posture when I walked by, the small smirk she'd give when she mentioned something I had said hours before, the subtle questions that probed for personal details. Each one was a reminder that she was watching, that she was preparing, and the uncertainty of what she was preparing for gnawed at me constantly. I couldn't bring myself to leave her apartment outright. We had shared leases, friends, and a life too intertwined to sever immediately. And so I watched, cautious, hyper-aware, slowly piecing together the reality that the roommate I had thought I knew, the person I had considered merely quirky, had depths I had never imagined. And the second phone, with its meticulous cataloging of me, was just the beginning. I didn't know what she intended, only that practicing implied a future act, a purpose I couldn't yet see, and it terrified me more than I could express. Yet even in fear, I noticed moments of hesitation in her, moments when her gaze faltered, when she seemed almost unsure, as if she were balancing between something dangerous and something she didn't fully understand herself. It created an unsettling tension in the apartment, a quiet war of observation and subtle restraint, and each passing day added layers to my anxiety. I found myself walking on eggshells, unsure whether to confront her again, unsure whether ignoring the behavior would allow it to fester or provoke something worse, unsure whether I was already too entangled in a situation I could not control. The mere thought that my daily movements, my personal space, my sense of privacy were being recorded, analyzed, and perhaps even rehearsed for a purpose I could not yet grasp made my chest tighten. And still, she smiled at me occasionally, that calm, enigmatic smile, as if she were aware of the storm brewing inside me and relishing in it, knowing something I didn't, and the uncertainty became unbearable. I needed to know the truth, but I also feared the answer, the realization that what she was practicing for could change everything about my life. It wasn't just my clothes, my space, or my privacy at stake. It was the trust I had extended, the boundaries I had assumed were understood, the life I had thought was safe. Yet, despite the fear, part of me was compelled to observe, to see how far this would go, to watch her actions and try to predict her next move. I became hyper-aware of every small detail, the way she organized my clothes, the order in which she arranged my possessions, the fleeting glances when she thought I wasn't looking, the way her smile would sometimes flicker into something unreadable, almost impatient. It was as if she was rehearsing, preparing, waiting for the moment when all her careful observation would culminate in an act only she knew, and a knowledge that I could not see it yet was maddening. Sleep became elusive, anxiety became a constant companion, and the apartment itself felt like a cage where the air was thick with anticipation and dread, yet I couldn't escape, couldn't sever the connection without upheaval I wasn't prepared to face. And still, she moved among me with a casual grace, smiling, laughing, borrowing clothes as if nothing were wrong, her calm assurance a stark contrast to the storm she had set in motion with that second phone, the evidence of obsession hidden in plain sight, her words echoing relentlessly in my mind. "I'm practicing. You'll see." Days turned into weeks, and the tension in the apartment grew like a quiet, creeping fog, seeping into every corner of my life. I tried to ignore it, tried to pretend she was just being quirky, but the second phone, and the knowledge of its existence had changed everything. Every morning I would wake to find my clothes moved slightly, folded differently, or hanging in places I hadn't left them. At first I told myself it was a coincidence, that I was overreacting, but the precision of it made that impossible. She had an uncanny ability to know exactly where my favorite hoodie would be, exactly which outfit I would wear, exactly which shoes I preferred for certain days, and the way she observed me while I got dressed, her gaze soft but intense, made my stomach churn with unease. I caught myself checking the apartment more carefully, scanning for cameras, for hidden devices, for any evidence that my life was being watched beyond what I could see. She noticed my unease, of course, but she never seemed concerned herself. Instead, she would offer these calm, almost cryptic reassurances. "I'm just trying to understand you better," or "You'll see, it's all for a purpose." And the casual way she said it made my skin crawl. I began noticing patterns, subtle behaviors that suggested she was mapping my routines, cataloging habits I hadn't realized I exhibited. She asked questions that seemed casual but were oddly specific: which routes I took to work, what I liked to eat for lunch, how long I usually stayed in certain rooms, the books I read, the music I listened to while cooking. Each question, each observation felt like a piece of a puzzle she was constructing, a puzzle I wasn't allowed to see yet. I felt my privacy dissolving, my boundaries evaporating under the quiet intensity of her presence. My mind raced constantly, imagining what practicing meant, why she needed that second phone, and what her endgame might be. I tried talking to friends about it, but the descriptions made me sound paranoid, and even I sometimes wondered if I was overreacting, if I was misinterpreting the quiet ways she had always been unusual. Yet the hidden phone and the meticulous photos were undeniable, and the calm certainty in her words and manner only made the uncertainty more suffocating. One evening, after coming home from a long day, I found her sitting on the couch with my sweater draped over her shoulders, scrolling through the second phone with her legs tucked beneath her. She looked up at me and smiled as if nothing were wrong. "You'll understand soon," she said, and the words hung in the air like a warning. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake thinking of the countless possibilities, trying to imagine what she had been practicing for all this time, and every scenario made my heart race faster. I felt watched, even when she wasn't near me. I began noticing the way she would appear at doorways just as I turned my head, the subtle way she adjusted her posture when I entered a room, the fleeting expressions she gave when she thought I wasn't looking. It was as though every action I took was a test, a rehearsal, a performance she was analyzing. My anxiety grew, making me jump at small noises, my mind endlessly spinning webs of anticipation and dread. Yet there was something about her calm demeanor that was hypnotic, almost magnetic, and I found myself drawn into her orbit despite every instinct screaming to distance myself. I couldn't predict what she would do next, yet I couldn't look away. I began to catalog my own movements, measuring every step, every gesture, every interaction, trying to regain control over a situation that had long escaped my grasp. Meals became tense, conversations were loaded with hidden meanings I couldn't decipher. Even friends visiting the apartment felt the shift, sensing the quiet tension, the unspoken surveillance that hung in the air like a heavy mist. And then, one night, curiosity overcame caution. I decided to follow her silently after she left the apartment, wondering if she was meeting someone, recording, or taking the second phone somewhere else. I trailed her through the streets, keeping a careful distance, heart pounding with adrenaline and fear. She moved with ease, almost deliberately, as if aware of being followed, yet unconcerned. Eventually, she stopped at a small, dimly lit park and sat on a bench, taking the second phone from her pocket and scrolling through it under the faint glow of the street lamp. I watched from behind a tree, seeing the meticulous way she organized the photos, her fingers tracing each one as though memorizing details I couldn't even imagine mattered. She whispered to herself occasionally, her voice soft and rhythmic, almost like a mantra. "Almost ready, you'll see." I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but fear rooted me to the spot. The intensity of her focus, combined with the eerie calm of her movements, made it impossible to act. My imagination ran wild. Was she creating some kind of art? A secret scrapbook? Or was it something darker? Something meant to involve me directly in ways I couldn't yet understand. I returned to the apartment that night with a sense of foreboding that gnawed at every nerve. The thought of living under the same roof as someone capable of such precise observation, planning, and secrecy made my chest tighten. I began to realize that the harmless quirks I had laughed off at the start were only a surface layer, masking a level of obsession I had never encountered before. The apartment, once a place of comfort, had become a labyrinth of uncertainty, each corner holding a potential secret, each gesture a possible signal. And yet, despite the fear, there was a part of me that could not look away, that could not deny the strange fascination her meticulousness elicited, the way she seemed to exist in her own world, a world where I was the focus, the subject of an obsession that had begun innocently but was escalating into something impossible to ignore. Days bled into nights, weeks stretched into a tense rhythm of observation and anxiety, and the second phone remained at the center of it all, a silent, constant reminder of the power she held in knowing so much about me, of the unknown purpose for which she had been practicing so diligently, and I began to wonder whether my life would ever feel private again, whether the boundaries I had taken for granted could ever be restored, and whether I had already crossed into a situation I could not escape. And yet there she was, smiling calmly, moving through my life with quiet assurance, leaving the second phone as both a mystery and a threat, whispering in that same eerie, cryptic tone, "You'll see." And I realized that my own curiosity and fear were intertwined in a way that made me both prisoner and observer, unable to fully detach, unable to fully confront, caught between dread and fascination, and the realization that I had no idea what she was truly planning gripped me with a cold, relentless intensity that I could not shake. I began to dread coming home, yet I dreaded leaving even more, because every moment away from the apartment became an opportunity for her to dig deeper into my life, my things, my identity, and the uncertainty of what she might be doing in those hours gnawed at me constantly. Until one day I decided to work from home just to keep an eye on her, desperate to regain even a sliver of control. But the more I watched her, the more terrified I became, because she didn't hide anymore. No, instead she watched me right back, openly, with an almost pleased expression, like she had been waiting for me to finally acknowledge the twisted game she had been playing. And every time our eyes met, I saw a spark of excitement in hers, as if she knew something critical that I did not. She started making small changes in our routines, like waking up at the exact same time I did, cooking the same breakfast I usually made, standing behind me at the bathroom mirror, brushing her hair in perfect sync with my movements, until one morning I noticed she was wearing the exact same outfit as me, down to the earrings, down to the shoelaces tied in my peculiar double knot style. And when I stared at her in shock, she simply smiled and said, "I'm getting better," in a tone so casual it made my blood run cold. And I realized the practicing wasn't about the clothes or the routines or the photographs. It was about becoming me. She wanted to mimic me so perfectly that no one could tell us apart. And the second phone was just her blueprint. The next turning point came when I walked into the living room one afternoon and found her sitting on the carpet surrounded by printouts of my face, hundreds of images, all taken from angles she shouldn't have had access to. Some clearly while I slept, my mouth slightly open, my hair sprawled across the pillow, totally vulnerable. And next to them were handwritten notes analyzing my posture, facial expressions, handwriting samples she had copied from letters I sent to my family, everything categorized and highlighted, as if she were studying a subject she planned to replicate with chilling accuracy. I finally snapped and demanded she tell me what she was doing, why she was so obsessed with replacing every piece of who I was. And she only whispered, "You're so lucky. People love you without you trying. You get attention without wanting it. You are everything I was never allowed to be." And as her voice cracked on that last sentence, I realized this wasn't just obsession. It was envy, desperation, identity starvation. And she had decided the only way to have what I had was to become me completely. Panic surged through me, and I made up my mind to move out, to break the lease and escape before she crossed whatever final line she had been inching toward. But the very next day, when I told her I was leaving, she looked almost hurt, like a child being abandoned, and she stepped closer than she ever had before, whispering, "Please don't leave yet. I'm not ready." And it took everything in me not to shove past her and run, because the sheer audacity of her words, "not ready," implied that I was no longer a person to her, but a project with a deadline she needed to meet. That night, I locked myself in my bedroom, pushed a dresser against the door, and stayed awake listening as she moved through the apartment, her footsteps slow and deliberate, occasionally stopping right outside my door as if she were waiting for me to move, whispering my name so quietly it sounded like it came from inside my own head. And minutes stretched into hours as fear became a living thing crawling through my veins, reminding me that the person on the other side of the door wasn't just watching anymore, she was preparing to act. Right before dawn, I heard her slide something under my door, and when the first sunlight crept in, I picked it up with trembling hands. It was a printed photo of me asleep, taken from a new angle, an angle above my head, meaning she must have hovered directly over me while I slept recently, despite every precaution I thought I had taken. And beneath the photo were the words, "Almost perfect," written in handwriting so identical to mine that for a moment I thought I had written it myself. That was the moment I understood that she wasn't merely copying me. She was erasing the line between us, slowly peeling away my autonomy, my privacy, my existence piece by stolen piece, until there would be no version of me that existed outside her control. I tried calling the landlord, the police, anyone who could intervene, but every time I picked up the phone, I felt watched, monitored, as if she knew every move I made before I made it, as if she had memorized me so well she could predict my fear before I even felt it. And the chilling part was, I knew she was right outside the room, listening, waiting, still practicing, and deep down in my bones, I felt the horrifying truth. The moment she decided she was ready, there would be nowhere to hide. I spent the entire day barricaded in my bedroom, trying to convince myself that sunrise meant safety, that daylight could somehow dilute the terror she radiated. But the apartment felt smaller now, like its walls had been quietly closing in around me for months without my noticing. And when I finally worked up the nerve to crack open my door, the first thing I saw was her, sitting perfectly still on the couch, upright, hands folded neatly in her lap, staring straight ahead at nothing, as if she had powered down overnight and was waiting to be activated again. She didn't turn when I stepped out, but I could see the faint reflection of myself in her pupils from across the room, and that eerie stillness was somehow worse than her usual invasive attention. So I grabbed my bag and keys with shaking hands and told her I needed to get some air, but she finally moved then, just her eyes, snapping toward me with a precision too sharp to be human, and she said, "Don't be long," with a softness that sounded like a threat wearing a polite mask. I fled the building and went straight to the leasing office, heart pounding, every step feeling like I was being followed. And when I breathlessly explained everything, the copying, the photos, the surveillance, the manager raised an eyebrow and told me she had already filed a complaint about me, claiming I had been harassing her and stealing her belongings, painting me as the unstable one. And the worst part was the way the manager studied me, like he was trying to decide which one of us wore the role of victim more convincingly. Panicked, I called my best friend to come get me, and while I waited outside, I checked my phone, only to find dozens of missed calls and texts from an unknown number, all reading variations of, "Don't lie about me," "Come home," "You promised we would finish," "We're almost there." Each message more frantic than the last, like she wasn't angry I ran, she was terrified it would ruin her plan. I waited on the curb for what felt like forever, scanning every face and car that passed, certain she might emerge from anywhere. And when my friend finally arrived, the relief nearly knocked me over. But as we drove away, I glanced back at the building and saw her standing at my bedroom window, wearing my jacket, my hair styled exactly like mine had been that morning. And I swear, even from a distance, she had arranged her face into the exact expression of panic I had worn minutes earlier, perfectly mimicking my fear as if it belonged to her too. At my friend's house, I tried to calm down, but every mirror felt wrong, like my reflection wasn't reacting quickly enough, like I was being watched through my own eyes. And the dread only deepened when my phone buzzed again, this time with a video message. She was in my room, walking slowly around it, narrating in my voice, my exact tone, cadence, breathing patterns, saying things I would never say, like, "I don't need this life anymore," and "She deserves to be me now." And beneath that was a soft sound I couldn't ignore, the scrape of my dresser being dragged away from the door, and then the whisper I recognized instantly as my own because she had mastered it by now. "Come home. I'm ready." I didn't sleep that night, too afraid that closing my eyes would invite her into whatever fragile boundary was left between us, and while my friend tried to reassure me that it was just a weird, obsessive phase, I knew, deep in my bones, that it was something far more deliberate, so I asked if we could go back to my place the next morning, not to stay, but to gather my belongings and leave for good. My friend agreed, though nerves made her grip the steering wheel too tight as we pulled into the parking lot, and I noticed immediately that the living room lights were on, even though I was the one who turned them off before running out, and when we opened the apartment door, the air smelled like my perfume, stronger than I ever wore it, like she had drenched the room in the scent of me, hoping to erase all traces of herself. And as we stepped inside, we froze at the sight of my roommate's bedroom door wide open, every surface inside covered with Polaroids of me, eating, brushing my teeth, sleeping, laughing, staring off into space when I thought I was alone, some taken from angles impossible for a human to capture without being inches away. My friend whispered that we needed to call the police, but before either of us could reach for our phones, a soft shuffling sound drifted from down the hallway, my room, followed by a voice voice that made my stomach drop. It was me again, calling out, "Hey, I thought you left," as if I were already inside waiting. And then she stepped into view, wearing my favorite hoodie, my exact jeans, the necklace my mother gave me that I hadn't even realized was missing, her hair cut to mirror mine perfectly, styled the same messy way I always try to fix but never fully succeed at, and her posture, slouched, weight slightly to the left, matched mine so precisely that even I felt disoriented, like I was staring into a corrupted reflection that forgot it shouldn't exist outside a mirror. My friend instinctively stepped between us, but my roommate's eyes locked onto mine with a hungry clarity as she said, "I fixed everything you hated about yourself," running a hand down her face to show off features that looked too familiar, too practiced, and she stepped closer with each word, voice trembling with emotion that wasn't hers to feel. "You don't have to be you anymore. I can protect you. I can finish what you started." And that phrase, "finish what you started," lodged in my throat, choking me with a fear I had never experienced, because something deep inside me understood that she meant to replace me, to remove me from my own life like a defective version of the identity she had perfected. My friend grabbed my arm and shouted for us to leave, and the last thing I saw as we ran out the door was her expression twisting from devotion into rage, her voice rising into a shriek that didn't sound human anymore. "Don't you dare take what's mine!" And then the pounding of her footsteps chasing us down the corridor grew louder, too fast, too strong, and in that moment I realized the truth. She wasn't practicing to be me, she was practicing to take me. We sprinted down the hallway like our lives depended on it, because they did, and the sound of her feet behind us was so rapid it didn't make sense, like her bones were bending, her joints snapping into a form built for hunting rather than living, and every second she closed the distance. My friend fumbled for her keys with shaking hands as we reached the parking lot, the entire world narrowing into the metallic jingle and my frantic breaths, while behind us my roommate screamed my name, not my legal name, but the nickname only I called myself privately when I wrote in my journal, a name she should never have known, and something about hearing it echo through the night made the terror blossom in a new direction. She wanted more than my clothes, more than my mannerisms. She wanted my soul, the pieces I never showed anyone. So the moment the car door unlocked, we threw ourselves inside and peeled out of there, the wheels screeching so loud it drowned out her pounding fists hitting the rear window as we escaped. My friend kept asking what we should do, call the police, call someone's parents, but every suggestion felt useless, because how do you explain a nightmare like this in a way anyone would believe? And while she drove us to her place, far away from that apartment, I stared out the window and realized that even distance didn't make me feel safer, because if she could track my routines and break into my privacy without me ever noticing, she could find me anywhere. At my friend's apartment, we locked every door and closed the blinds, but exhaustion eventually won and I collapsed on the couch, adrenaline fading just enough to let darkness pull me under. And that's when the dreams began. Flashes of being watched through a reflection, glimpses of her face merging with mine, the sensation of my fingers being dragged apart and reassembled into her hands, and a whisper threading through everything that wasn't spoken aloud but felt like it crawled directly into my skull. "I'm almost ready." I woke up drenched in sweat, the room silent and still, but the dread didn't loosen its grip, especially when I checked my phone and saw a new notification, an airdrop request with a single image attached, a photo of me sleeping on this very couch, timestamped 5 minutes earlier, the angle from right above my face. Panic surged like electricity through my body as I jumped up and searched the apartment, while my friend grabbed a kitchen knife, but there was no sound, no broken lock, no open window, only the sinking realization that she had been here, or maybe she never left, maybe she followed us inside while the fear blinded us to anything but escape. We stood in the center of the living room listening to the hum of the refrigerator and our own pounding hearts, too afraid to speak loudly, too afraid to imagine what she was capable of next. And then my phone buzzed again with a new message from an unknown number. No text, just a picture of her wearing my smile, my exact smile, with the caption, "You don't have to run anymore. I already know how to be you." My friend and I stood frozen, staring at that message like it was a countdown clock to the end of my identity, because somehow she had captured something beyond a simple photograph. She had studied me deeply enough to replicate the most human parts of me: expression, emotion, the subtle way I smiled when I was nervous. And the more I stared, the more it felt like she wasn't just imitating me, she was becoming me, piece by piece. My friend grabbed her phone and tried calling 911, explaining everything in a trembling voice, but I could see the disbelief forming already. Because how do you explain someone stealing your identity in such a visceral way? How do you prove psychological terror when the wounds don't bleed? And while she struggled through the call, I decided I couldn't sit still any longer. I needed answers, or closure, or something that would give me back control. So I told my friend we had to return to my apartment, because running clearly wasn't stopping her. She already knew where I was. She was always one step ahead, and hiding would only feed the fear. My friend cursed under her breath but refused to let me go alone, so we drove back, each streetlight flickering overhead like a warning, and by the time we arrived, the night had thickened into something suffocating, the building looming like a mouth waiting to swallow us again. Inside, everything looked the same, yet wrong. Too clean, too neat, like she had wiped away all traces of the chaos earlier. And when we checked my room, the clothes she stole were neatly folded in a perfect stack on my bed, organized like a shrine. And right on top lay my favorite jacket with a note pinned to it. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of everything." That's when my friend noticed the closet door was slightly ajar, and before I could stop her, she yanked it open, and my roommate stood there in the darkness, smiling with a stillness that made her feel less like a person and more like a doll wearing skin, her head tilting in a way that bones shouldn't allow. And she stepped forward slowly, her eyes locked on mine with pure possession burning behind them, as she whispered that I should have understood sooner, because she had been preparing for months, studying me, perfecting me, and now that she knew every detail, the way I breathed, the way I cried, the secrets I murmured in my sleep, there was only one thing left for her to take. She lunged so fast I barely saw movement, knocking me backwards while my friend grabbed her arms and tried to hold her. But she was terrifyingly strong, thrashing and screeching a sound that wasn't human, her nails digging into the floor as if she could crawl even while pinned. And in her frenzy, she snarled that I didn't deserve my life, that she would wear it better than I ever did, that the world needed the version of me she could be because she was willing to become perfect while I was wasting it. My friend, acting on pure instinct, slammed her against the wall and threw the heavy dresser in front of the closet once she was inside, trapping her while she shrieked and pounded from within. And we didn't wait another second, running out of the apartment as her voice howled after us, promising this wasn't over and that soon there would be no difference between her and me, because by the time anyone realized something was wrong, she would already be living my life and I would be gone forever, replaced without anyone even noticing the switch. I stumbled backward as the realization crashed over me like a cold wave. Lily hadn't given up. She hadn't been scared off. She had been preparing, circling my life like a ghost waiting to slip back into my skin. And now she was closer than ever. Emma's eyes widened with terror as she noticed the shadow lurking just beyond the patio fence, a silhouette too still to be anything natural, and I felt my body lock up, breath shallow as I whispered, "She found us," while Emma grabbed my hand and dragged me back inside, double-locking the sliding door, pulling the curtains shut as if cloth could stop obsession. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket, notifications pouring in, private messages on social media, random friend requests, all with variations of my name paired with Lily's birthday, and then a new text from an unknown number. "You keep running, I keep learning," followed by a selfie of Lily in a dim room, wearing my favorite hoodie, her hair styled exactly like mine, her posture mimicking mine so perfectly it made my stomach twist, as if I were looking at a broken mirror version of myself. Emma tried calling the police again, pacing the room while I stared at my reflection in the black TV screen, suddenly paranoid that even my own image wasn't truly mine anymore. And before long, my phone rang. Not a faceless number this time, but Lily's own contact, still saved as roommate Hart from when I'd naively believed she cared about me, the ringtone sounding absurdly cheerful in the oppressive tension as Emma snatched the phone and put it on speaker. Lily's voice drifted out, soft and eerily calm. "You shouldn't have left me. You're making this transition so much harder." She sighed like she was the one hurting, like I had betrayed her, and I finally snapped, yelling back that she needed help, that this was over, that the police were on their way. Yet she only laughed, the light, airy giggle she used whenever she got exactly what she wanted, before saying, "Oh, they already came by the house, sweetheart. They think you moved out, and since your mail is being forwarded, all your bills come to me now." Then added with a sickening sweetness, "You really should thank me for keeping your life going while you figure yourself out." As Emma and I exchanged horrified looks, because those weren't threats from someone losing control, they were declarations from someone who had already taken steps to become me, legally, socially, mentally. I could hear her walking as she talked, footsteps echoing like she was in a stairwell, getting closer with every tapped step, and my heart slammed against my ribs when she whispered, "I'm almost there," before the line disconnected, leaving nothing but the ringing silence of a house that suddenly felt too dark, too vulnerable, too exposed. Emma grabbed her keys, urging that we had to leave now, move again, though somewhere Lily couldn't predict, but as we crept toward the front door, I froze. The welcome mat was shifted slightly, and tucked beneath it was a printed photo of Emma and me sitting on her couch earlier today, laughing, happy, unaware that Lily had been watching, waiting, documenting how easily she could slip into the life she believed she deserved. I could hardly breathe as I looked up and saw the faint imprint of fingers on the glass, like someone had pressed close enough to see inside, and while Emma locked every door in a frenzy, I stared out into the night, knowing Lily was somewhere out there, not running, not giving up, simply waiting for the perfect moment to take the final step. up, replacing me entirely. Emma insisted we move to the safest room in the house, a windowless guest bedroom buried deep in the hallway. But even as she barricaded the door with a dresser and stacked heavy boxes in front of it, the walls felt like they were closing in, the silence growing thicker by the second, and all I could think about was how Lily had managed to dismantle my life piece by piece while smiling sweetly, acting like she was saving me from myself. Every memory I had with her now felt contaminated. The movie nights, the way she'd choose outfits for fun, the compliments about how I walked, talked, laughed, how she'd giggle and say, "We're practically the same person," while I brushed it off as friendship. But it had been practice, rehearsals for a role she intended to steal, and now she was so close to perfecting the performance that even I doubted my own identity when I caught myself mimicking gestures I'd learned indirectly from her. Emma sat beside me on the floor, knees pulled tight against her chest, her voice trembling as she tried to reassure me that we were safe here, that the police would soon track Lily down. But I couldn't shake the dread that Lily was already a step ahead, always anticipating our next move, like she'd studied my thoughts long before I ever considered them myself. My phone buzzed again, vibrating aggressively across the wooden floor like a frantic heartbeat, and when I reluctantly picked it up, a new photo flashed across the screen. Lily standing outside Emma's house, in the exact spot we had first hugged after I arrived, only this time she was holding a set of keys, my keys, and the caption read, "I really missed home." Another message followed instantly. "Do you want yours back? Come out." And even though I knew stepping outside would be exactly what she wanted, a part of me, some strange disoriented part, felt pulled toward her, as if she were a version of me left out in the cold too long and had come to collect what she was owed. Emma snatched the phone away with anger rising in her voice, saying we should call the police again and demand they listen this time. But the moment she dialed, a loud rhythmic knock echoed through the house, 3 sharp raps that cut straight through every layer of courage I had left, and Emma went pale as the knocking turned into a slow drag, like fingers trailing across the door frames, mapping the house, learning its shape the same way Lily had memorized mine. We held our breath, listening, praying she would leave, but then the soft sound of plastic scraping the lock filled the hallway. She was trying keys, one by one, patient, methodical, as if she had all the time in the world to break into this sanctuary. Emma whispered for me to stay quiet, but panic pushed me to the corner where the closet door stood slightly ajar, and inside I noticed a small home security monitor Emma must have forgotten, one that showed grainy footage from a front door camera, and my stomach flipped when I saw Lily on screen, her head slowly tilting up until her eyes stared straight into the camera. Into me, a smile curling across her lips with the kind of certainty that made the world feel scripted, inevitable. Suddenly, the lock clicked, not fully open, but enough to jolt Emma into action as she grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, gripping it like a weapon, while I clutched the security monitor like a lifeline, both of us frozen as the door handle jiggled aggressively, then stopped, replaced by the sound of light footsteps retreating. But not of defeat, no. Lily never retreated. She repositioned. The footsteps moved toward the side of the house, then paused, and when I checked the camera again, she was gone, vanished into the night, leaving only a text that appeared seconds later. "Not yet. You're not ready. I'll come back when you finally understand what's best for you," followed by a heart emoji, as if love had anything to do with what she was doing. Emma and I stayed awake the entire night, listening for every creak and shift in the air, afraid to breathe too loudly. And when the first light of morning finally filtered beneath the door, I dared to hope she had given up, until I opened my eyes fully and saw a shadow on the wall. A hat, a mouth, a silhouette that wasn't Emma's, and my pulse spiked wildly as I realized it was my shadow, only the body casting it wasn't me, because as the sun rose higher and the room brightened, the shadow moved slightly out of sync, as if someone else was standing behind the wall, copying me, preparing to step out and replace me the moment I slipped. That was the moment I understood Lily hadn't gone anywhere. She was still here, closer than ever, just waiting for the exact right moment to finish becoming me. Morning arrived with a false sense of safety, as if sunlight alone could erase the terror that had seeped into the walls overnight. And though Emma suggested we leave the house immediately, part of me hesitated, not because I wanted to stay, but because I knew running would only delay the inevitable, that Lily would keep hunting until she stood exactly where I stood now. Still, I forced myself to move, to pack whatever essentials I could find while Emma made arrangements for us to stay with her cousin 2 towns over, somewhere Lily would never expect, somewhere far from the streets she'd memorized and the neighbors she'd charmed. And for a moment I allowed myself to believe this was the turning point, that distance and secrecy could save me. But then my phone buzzed again, a notification that made my knees almost buckle. A new device has signed into your bank account, followed by a second alert, your password has been changed, and a third, your profile information was updated. And when I opened the details, my heart dropped into a pit of ice, because the name on my account, now showed Lily's birthday instead of mine, her photo instead of mine, her address instead of the new one Emma had arranged. She wasn't just following my life, she was stealing it in real real time, replacing each record of me with a piece of herself, and I felt everything inside me unravel just as Emma grabbed my shoulders and forced me to meet her eyes, telling me we had to go before Lily made her next move, before she cornered us again with that eerie palm and those practiced versions of my smiles. And I nodded even though my voice wouldn't come out. We rushed through the house toward the garage, Emma fumbling with her keys, but when the door lifted and the daylight poured in, I saw something lying just behind the rear tire. My old ID card, the one I thought I'd lost months ago, only now the photo looked subtly different, like someone had scraped away the edges of my face and sharpened the jawline to look more like Lily's. And the chills running down my spine felt like tiny electric shocks as I knelt to pick it up, noticing a message written on the back in looping handwriting. Identity is fluid. You should try being someone better. Followed by a heart, as if this were a game, a makeover, a gift she was giving me. Emma took the card, swearing under her breath as she tossed it aside, urging me into the passenger seat as she started the engine with shaky hands. And we drove away from the house that had once felt safe and ordinary, entering highways where everything moved fast enough to blur into streaks of silver and green. But even as miles stretched between us and Lily, I couldn't shake the sensation that she was still watching, that she'd predicted we would flee, that she had something planned for wherever we landed. Emma tried to distract me with casual conversation, but my mind kept replaying every detail of the past year, how Lily always asked about my childhood dreams, my passwords, my routines, how she'd borrowed clothes not because she liked them, but because she needed to know how they moved, how they fit on me. And the more I thought about it, the clearer the picture became. She didn't want to hurt me, not physically. No, she wanted me to become irrelevant, an obsolete version that nobody remembered, so that by the time I tried to reclaim myself, the world wouldn't believe I had ever been the original. When we finally reached Emma's cousin's apartment, a tall building with a secured entrance and watchful neighbors, I collapsed onto the couch while Emma explained everything to her cousin, who reacted with disbelief, turning quickly into protective urgency, promising we'd contact a lawyer, secure my identity, fix everything. But the optimistic plans felt paper thin, like trying to patch a sinking ship with tape, because Lily wasn't just a threat in the shadows anymore. She was embedded in my life structurally, legally, socially, and removing her would be like removing cement from a foundation that had already hardened. Night approached again too quickly, shadows lengthening across the apartment floor, and as I stared out the window, the city lights flickering against the glass, I wondered if Lily was already adjusting to her new version of me somewhere, smiling for photos, answering questions in my voice, walking around confidently, wearing the life I had built, and worst of all, I wondered if people would like her version better, if she would become the updated model of me, and I would become nothing but a glitch erased from existence. That thought tightened around my chest like a vice, and before I could stop myself, tears escaped, silent and hot, because deep down, I feared the truth. Lily didn't need to kill me to destroy me. She just needed to convince the world she was me. And then what would be left of the original besides a fading memory I might not even recognize anymore? That night stretched on endlessly, the dark pressing against the apartment windows like a living thing. And despite every layer of security around us, locked doors, coded elevators, a building full of alert strangers, I couldn't shake the feeling that Lily had already seeped through the cracks somehow, that she was watching from just beyond the edges of my awareness, pulling strings I couldn't see. Emma and her cousin did everything possible to ground me, wrapping me in blankets, making tea, speaking softly about plans, reporting identity theft, freezing my accounts, getting legal help. But their words felt like echoes bouncing off a void, because Lily had been planning this far longer than we had been reacting, and she moved with deliberate patience while we scrambled with fear. Around midnight, my phone rang again, not with a call, but with calendar alerts syncing from my old email account, notifications that shouldn't exist anymore. Appointment, hair consultation, tomorrow 11 a.m. Consultation, plastic surgeon, next week. Events that had been scheduled under my name, but aligned with her intentions, her transformation. And I couldn't stop trembling as I scrolled further, because she had added my name to all of it. Appointments meant to reconstruct my face into a closer version of hers, or reconstruct hers into a closer version of mine, blurring us until no one could say who was copying who, or which of us had started as the original. Emma cursed under her breath, grabbing the phone and shutting it off entirely, but the silence that followed was worse, because my mind filled it with every possibility of what Lily was doing now, practicing my smile in a mirror, rehearsing my voice until the tones aligned, wearing my clothes while pretending to forget she ever owned anything else. I went to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face, hoping to slow the spiral in my head, but when I looked at my reflection, something felt slightly off, not physically, but perceptually, like my brain hesitated before recognizing I was the one in the mirror, as if the reflection had grown tired of proving its authenticity. Panic rose like a tidal wave, and I turned away only to find a small package slipped beneath the bathroom door while I'd been inside. Emma shouted in disbelief that no one could have delivered anything without the security camera seeing them. But when she reviewed the footage, there was nothing. No figure approaching, no hand placing the envelope, just a glitch, a skip in the feed right before it appeared, like technology itself had been persuaded to cooperate with Lily's plans. Inside was a single sheet of paper with block letter font. Everything you fear is already true. And below it, a printed screenshot of a social media profile. My profile, except every recent post had been replaced with new photos. Lily smiling with friends. Lily sipping coffee at my favorite cafe. Lily hugging people who used to know me. All commenting things like, "You look amazing," and "So good to see you back," as if they believed without hesitation that she was me, celebrating her existence while unknowingly erasing mine. I collapsed onto the tile floor, tears running the way panic runs, fast, uncontrollable, while Emma knelt beside me trying to steady my breath, telling me none of this changed who I truly was, that no one could replace the core of a person. But her voice sounded far away, because for the first time I wondered if Lily was right, that identity was fragile, that the world only sees what you show it, and if she was showing them me better than I ever could, then what did that make me, except a faded draft of the person she perfected? Later, after I finally drifted into a restless half-sleep on the couch, I woke to the faint vibration of Emma's cousin's phone lighting up on the table, a soft, eerie glow in the dark room, and I leaned forward to read the notification, a message request from an account with my name, my profile picture. Well, Lily's version of it now, sent at 3:17 a.m. "Thank you for keeping her safe. I'll take care of everything soon." And a location tag beneath it showing this building, this exact apartment, and a final sentence that made my blood run cold. "Please make sure she looks like herself when I come get her." The certainty of those words sank like ice into my spine. Lily wasn't just planning to replace me from afar anymore. She was coming to finish the job herself, to stand face to face and strip away the last pieces of my identity until the world forgot I was ever here. The minutes crawled toward morning, thick with dread, every tick of the digital clock matching my pulse, fast, uneven, trying to outrun reality. It would have been easy to continue hiding beneath blankets and borrowed courage, but fear had evolved into something sharper, resolve. Emma stayed beside me, eyes wide open, refusing sleep. Her cousin contacted building security again, this time demanding a full lockdown and tracing of every logged entry into the property over the past 24 hours. We waited, but I was done being passive prey. I collected every document Lily had manipulated, every screenshot, every saved message, assembling a timeline that proved her steady invasion of my identity, financial moves, digital infiltration, her physical mimicry inching closer each week. She thought she knew me well enough to replace me, but she underestimated the one advantage I still held. I knew her too. When the mailbox camera footage finally arrived, the first frame nearly knocked the air out of me. The figure approaching the building wore a coat nearly identical to one I owned last winter before it disappeared mysteriously from my closet. Her hair, cut to my length, her stride copying how I moved through the world, confident but cautious. She lifted her chin at the security camera, a deliberate and chilling gesture as if offering proof of her success. No one would question she was me. The guard on duty had waved her inside without hesitation. My replacement already walked freely through a space I now entered as a guest. Emma grabbed her phone and said she was calling the police, but her cousin raised her hand, speaking calmly and firmly about evidence protocols, legal boundaries, and not tipping Lily off before we controlled the narrative. I realized then something crucial. If the world could so easily accept Lily as me, then exposing her carelessness would be our strongest leverage. I wasn't fighting for attention anymore. I was fighting for recognition of my history, my relationships, the texture of my life that no mimic could fabricate perfectly. I opened my phone, yes, the same one that betrayed me hours before, and logged into a secure account Emma insisted I create. My fingers shook, but my mind felt clearer than it had in weeks. I wrote a comprehensive statement documenting her impersonation, every suspicious shift that I once dismissed as coincidence, her curious comments about my passwords, how she always seemed to know who I was meeting and when, the times she suggested I dye my hair or change my style in ways that made me appear more like her, or more like the version of me she was already constructing. We attached the message Lily sent to Emma's cousin, mapping its location tag alongside the altered social posts. It painted a chilling portrait of obsession, but also a traceable, prosecutable one. Hours passed. The sun rose, pale and indifferent. Security buzzed the apartment. Someone in the lobby was asking for me by name, insisting she needed to fix everything. We stared at each other, silence compressing the room until every shallow breath sounded deafening. This was the confrontation Lily had orchestrated, the moment she would demand my surrender, her eyes filled with the same conviction that once fooled me into believing we were friends. Instead, the guard continued. "Police are with her." Relief didn't hit. just a kind of stunned emptiness. Emma nodded at me, and we walked to the lobby, step by step, my heart pounding with the weight of reclaiming myself. Through the security glass, I saw her. She looked exactly how she hoped, poised, certain, wearing my identity like a perfected mask. But the illusion wavered under fluorescent truth. There were tiny cracks, her posture too stiff, her smile too rehearsed, her eyes not reflecting any shared memories or genuine warmth. She stared at me with something close to confusion, like she couldn't understand how the original still existed when she had spent so long crafting the replacement. A detective approached her gently but professionally, asking her name, asking why she possessed documents, accounts, and images belonging to another person, why she believed she was me. Her expression contorted, not with guilt, but with disbelief. "They're confused," she pleaded, pointing towards me. "She's the one pretending. She stole my life." She said my name like she owned it, the syllables warped by desperation. This should have satisfied me, a legal takedown, exposure, justice. But as they guided her away, she didn't scream or fight. She looked directly into my eyes, and for one unguarded second, I saw what hid underneath the imitation. Someone who couldn't face her own reflection, someone who replaced the void inside herself with the outline of another person. And despite everything she had done, I felt something I never expected: sorrow. I reclaimed my accounts gradually. Friends reeled at how easily they had been fooled by a curated surface. I didn't blame them. I understood now how thin identity could appear from the outside. Emma urged therapy, and I agreed. Rebuilding trust in the world and in my own perception would take time. I also recorded the experience in my own words, documenting how subtle shifts can escalate into existential danger. My name, my presence, my history, these were not things the world automatically preserved. I had to protect them. Weeks later, I passed a mirror in a public restroom. My reflection paused for only a millisecond longer than usual, but this time, the delay didn't frighten me. It reminded me of everything I survived, how someone tried to become me by hollowing me out. I stepped closer, studying the details that made me unmistakably myself. No one could fully replicate the constellation of a life truly lived. Not anymore. I left the mirror behind with my head lifted, shoulders settled, breath steady. The world outside was still uncertain, still full of potential distortions, but my name belonged to me again. My identity was not a costume, it was earned, every imperfect piece of it. And if anyone ever tried to take it again, they would discover something Lily never understood. I am not replaceable.